Last night, for the brothers and sisters that weren't there, and just to jog your memory, we spoke about the grand purpose of our creation. We spoke about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a conversation with the angels, and He told them, Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifah. I'm putting on this ground a vicegerent, a guardian, or a representative of mine. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was questioned. The angels questioned. You're gonna put a creation that is gonna cause bloodshed, that's gonna cause a massacre or massacres and riots and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I know which that you do not know. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ, and He taught Adam the names. Now these names or these divine teachings weren't just for Adam alayhi salam. Now of course, Nabi Adam alayhi salam has special knowledge. There's narrations that state that these names, for example, were the names of the Ahlul Bayt and so on and so forth. But the resources that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Adam are the same resources that He gave to humans, because He's the father of humans. He's the father of all humans. So this gift that was bestowed upon all of humanity is there to equip us with the potential to reflect Allah's attributes. We made that clear yesterday. And our goal is to be mutakhalliqeen bi akhlaqillah, to hold the traits and the ethics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. That's the ultimate goal. And we said that the best exemplification of this, the best example of this was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was carried in the mission of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Tonight, we want to take this concept. I want you to keep it at the forefront of your mind, that you are the Khalifah of God, that you are a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we want to build on this and say, what does this truly mean? We want to build on this foundation and see, how do we achieve this purpose? If we understand that the purpose of my creation is that I'm a Khalifa of God, what do I do with this information? What do I do with this knowledge? How do I apply it in my day-to-day life? How does this serve me? And inshallah, by understanding this, we'll understand the platform upon which we start to establish this Tawheedi character that we're trying to extract from Karbala. So before we dive in, please recite the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's something unique about our creation, and that is that we have this innate yearning, this shawq for our divine purpose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Ya ayyuhal insan, innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqih. He says, O human being. He doesn't say, O believer, O Muslim, O mu'min. He says, O human being, regardless of your identity, regardless of your culture and your religion. He says, you are in constant strife for God. You are constantly striving towards God, and you will arrive to God that one day. One day you will get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But innately we're programmed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He programmed us towards perfection. That's why you're always trying to be the best in anything that you're trying to do. Regardless of what it is, whether it's school or work or playing soccer or being an engineer, whatever it is, you're always trying to be the best in that field, because you're always trying to seek perfection. Even if you want to, steal and somehow do bad things, you will try to be exceptional, as they would say. And I'm not going to give too many examples on that, so I don't give people ideas. But innately we have that desire, the desire to reach that potential. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this gravitational pull within us, just like a magnet. A magnet, if I was to put a magnet, its gravitational pull towards a metal, it's innate within it. It's installed within it. You can't ask the magnet, please don't gravitate towards metal. It's innate, it's within it. And that same way, our hearts are like a magnet. We're constantly trying to seek perfection. Our problem is, what do we identify to be perfection to be? What do we put that label for perfection? But essentially, this is the fitrah within us. This innate gravitational pull towards truth, towards perfection, is what we're going to call the fitrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. This natural disposition that pushes us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the ways that the fitrah expresses itself is through our love for knowledge. Like, ask yourself, even from when you were a child, whoever wants to be considered ignorant? Who wants to be considered stupid or dumb? Everyone wants to feel like they're knowledgeable. No one wants to claim ignorance. No one wants to accept it. And so this disposition towards that truth, the fitrah, is one of the mechanisms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put and installed within us. But we have to acknowledge that this fitrah can also get sick. It can be clouded. It can have illnesses. Just like our physical health can deteriorate, our spiritual health can deteriorate, our fitrah can also deteriorate. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the people الَّذِي خَتَمَ اللَّهَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sealed upon their hearts. The people that have gone too far. I'll give you an example. I once read this hadith. A person comes to Imam al-Abidin and asks him, he says, can God forgive Yazid for what he's done to your father? And Imam al-Abidin says, yes, of course he can forgive him. All he has to do is one salah, which is 2 rak'at, salat al-ghufayla. Depending on whether this narration is authentic or not, I haven't checked its authenticity, but it's widely renowned. Many people mention this hadith. He says, if he was to pray salat al-ghufayla between Maghrib and Isha, Allah would forgive him. But, he continues, he says, yet he will never have the power to do that salat. He will always be overcome by his illness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stamped on his heart that he won't even be able to approach that salat. He won't have the tawfiq of upholding that salat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although He's created this fitrah, He said, you need to ensure you maintain it and take care of it because it can go dull. Now, if it does go dark and it does go dull, can it go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course it can. But how capable are you of achieving that depends on how far deep you are. And inshallah, throughout the night, we'll give more examples on this. But this brings us to the role of the conscience. You know, the inner voice that you have that makes you feel bad about something. You know, you might say a lie or do something and you know internally, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have behaved in that particular way. Your conscience, that's part of the fitrah. That's part of that mechanism that tells you, hold on. Like when you feel guilty, right? That's a good experience because your conscience is making you feel guilty because you don't want to tread on another person's boundaries. You don't want to break another person's trust. If you didn't feel guilt, then you would just be breaking bridges, breaking friendships, and you wouldn't even care. You'd be a careless and reckless person. Whereas that guilt and that conscience can bring you back. So the point we want to finish off this first part of the talk is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us as khalifah and He's created within us predisposition towards perfections, towards kamal. Okay, we've established that. Now that we understand this gravitational pull towards our purpose, towards God, towards being khalifah, the question arises, all right, how do we achieve this? All right, okay, we get that, Hamad, thank you, it sounds all good, you're telling me nice stuff, but how do we actually achieve this? How do we apply this? And the answer comes according to 2 questions. Inshallah, the rest of the talk is going to be based on these 2 questions, and then we'll go into the historical context of the build-up of Karbala, and we'll conclude with that. The first crucial question is, the first point is we need to cultivate what is called self-awareness. And that means essentially we need to understand what are the unique components that make us human. What are the tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped us with to fulfill our role as a Khalifa. He's saying, okay, inni ja'alu fil ardi Khalifa. All right, Ya Allah, I accept. Thank you. You've made me a guardian. How do I do this? He says, I've given you components. There are parts of your being that's going to help you achieve this. So we need to become aware of these parts, these different components. Then, after we've understood these components, we need to know how do we utilize these components effectively to move towards this goal, to move towards my role of being a Khalif. So let's begin with the first point, in terms of self-awareness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His wisdom, has created us in a remarkable and unique condition. في أحسن تقويم, as the Quran puts it. Different to every other creation. A bird can fly, The animals can run and they can be fast and they can jump, but no bird can create an object that can fly like it. The human being can't fly, yet he can look at the bird and say, what makes the bird fly? And use certain components of his being so he can create something that can fly. See the difference between having a capability and having these capacities, these components? So, let's understand what are the most important and the primary components of the human being. The primary, and I'm saying primary for a reason, because there's more, but we're going to look at the primary components. The first primary component of the human being is the body. It's the physical self. It's the vessel in which we experience the world. It's our five senses. It's your sight, your hearing, your smelling, your tasting, your touching. These are the gateways that you use to interact with the world. And the body is the tool for action in this world, the tool for amal. Then you have the second component, which is the mind. This is the intellectual center. This is the seat of our logical thinking. This is what allows you to distinguish between truth and falsehood, between good and bad. See, your senses can tell you this is an apple. Your mind has to tell you whether you can eat this apple or not. Is it maghsoob? Is it stolen? Is it not stolen? The senses don't know. They know it's an apple. And then you have the third component, which is the heart. This is the emotional self. This is the home of your feelings. It's where you experience your happiness, your sadness, your love, your guilt, your shame. All the different emotions that color the human experience within this faculty. And the heart is also the center of your spiritual experience. The center of spiritual perception. It's the home of your intuition. The home of your deepest and darkest convictions and beliefs. Also, to some, the home of trauma, where it starts to impact all the other elements and components. I'm not going to dive too deep into that just yet. But we have to firstly understand these components. We said there's the body, there's the mind, and there's the heart. Because these components each play a vital role in your journey towards becoming a true khalifah, a proper khalifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you were to think about Imam Hussain alayhi salam, look at how he utilized these different components. He created perfect harmony with these components. His body was in constant service. Whether it was in prayer, whether it was in defense, whether it was in tafakkur, and his mind was sharp. He was making wise decisions. He was a leader. He was looking towards, he had foresight, he had wisdom. He was looking towards this whole story, this whole mission of his and his journey, and applying all of these different components with one goal. Like we mentioned yesterday, وَجْعَلْ أَعْمَالِي وَأُرَادِي كُلُّهَا وِرْدًا وَاحِدًا. Everything is infused with one hadaf, one goal. But understanding these components, so you understood. Now if I ask you, what are the three components? You tell me the mind, the body, and the heart. Beautiful, you understand them. Okay, but that's not enough. It's not enough to just understand that I have these components. I didn't teach you something new. You knew that you had a mind before you came into this talk. You knew you had emotions. You knew you had a body. But now the question is, how do I utilize these components in a way that I'm fulfilling my purpose? So imagine Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he knew the truth with his mind, but he didn't act with his body, or his heart was filled with fear, he was afraid. What would have happened? What would the outcome be of Karbala? So the crucial point, my brothers and sisters, to know whether these components are working correctly, the sign of the body and the mind and the heart working correctly is if they work in harmony with each other. They work together. And I'm going to explain what I mean by this. But there's no conflict between what you know, what you feel, and what you do. Inshallah, with examples, all of this will make much more sense. So, this takes us to the next part of the talk, which is the importance of creating harmony between the three components, the primary components of the being, the body, the mind, and the heart. And this is essential. And I'm going to give you an example of it. I'm going to give you an analogy to bring this home. Imagine you had an aeroplane. Imagine this, we were to ask the person who created the aeroplane, an airplane which was designed to fly through the sky. Every part of this plane, my brothers and sisters, every part of this plane, from its wings to its engines, is crafted with one purpose. Its single purpose is to enable this plane to fly. It wants to fly through the skies. Now, what would happen if one component of this plane worked against its purpose? Yani imagine there was a part of this plane which was pulling the plane down whilst it was in the ground, or it was in the air. What would you do? What would you ask? You'd say, I don't understand. To the creator of this airplane, why did you create this? He'd be like, I don't know, I feel like creating it. It does not make sense for a component of this plane to work in opposite and in contradiction to the purpose of the plane. Every part of the plane has to work towards a single purpose. If the purpose of the plane is to fly, you can't put something in there that's bringing it down. So, for example, let's take a practical example. Let's say someone understands that listening to certain music is haram. They're certain. They have this belief and certainty within them. They know for a fact X music is haram. Their mind has confirmed it. But they continue to listen to the music. Here you find a clear disconnection between knowledge and action, between the mind, the heart, and the body. See, the mind processed that I shouldn't be listening to music. The heart believed this music is haram and it's a sin, and that I'm sinning against God. And the body committed the sin. There's no harmony. They're working against each other. What does this lead to? Not only does it stop you from fulfilling your purpose, not only does it stop you from being a true representative of God, but this is one of the causes of mental health issues. A lot of people, and I'm not saying all of mental health issues are caused from these, people experience trauma and so on and so forth, and severe experiences. But most of the conversations I have with people, when they tell me I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling this, if you were to go deep down, you see the way they're acting is in contradiction to what they believe. It's in contradiction to what they think. It's in contradiction to how they feel, and there's all this disharmony within them. And I'm sure most of us, or some of us, have experienced this at some point in our life, where you feel lost and someone says, "Bro, is everything okay?" You say, "I don't know. Can't explain it. I just can't explain how I'm feeling right now. I feel so down. I feel weird." No, what's the feeling? Disharmony. I'm telling you right now, it's disharmony. There's no harmony. You have to see what is going on truly. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's like driving a car and you have one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brake. You know, it's going to move in its spot, but it's not going to take you anywhere. And when there's no harmony, you start to see that. So how do you know if you've achieved this harmony? How do you know? What's the litmus test? Well, the Quran gives us the answer in a beautiful way. And it uses the concept or the terminology of at-tama'nina, tranquility. When our components are in harmony, when our actions are aligned with our knowledge, aligned with our emotions and our desires, we experience a profound sense of peace and contentment and tranquility. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to this state in the Holy Quran as an-nafs al-mutma'inna. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya. O reassured soul, O tranquil soul, return to your Lord, well pleased and pleasing to Him, and enter among my righteous servants and enter my paradise. That this tranquility, this inner peace, is the hallmark of all of those who align themselves with that divine purpose. And that is the perfect example of this harmony is who? Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allah salli ala Muhammad. A perfect practical manifestation of this is who? Imam Hussain alayhi salam. In the face of great hardship, they were able to stay composed. They were able to stay calm. Because their mind, their body, and their emotions, everything was in sync, everything was in harmony, everything was aligned. And I'm going to show you how. By the end of this talk, I'm going to give you practical examples of where this was applied in Karbala. I'm not just going to say things, I'm going to show you how. But if you were to look at the contrast between Imam Hussain alayhi salam, Imam Hussein's camp, and Yazid's camp, if you were just to look at the two different armies, you'll see there was a huge difference between the two. Not just in number. Yes, one group had 1,000 people and one group just had over 100. But the difference that you'll see is one side was in perfect harmony, whilst the other was witnessing turmoil. And the funny thing is, it's not the people that had less number that was witnessing turmoil. It's the people that were in less number that was witnessing harmony and peace and tranquility in the middle of the harshest adversities. I'll give you an example. Let's look at Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd is the leader of the army of Yazid. He's running the army of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Look at what Umar ibn Sa'd says in this piece of poetry. And look at how he explains his internal conflict. He says, by God, I do not know. And indeed, I am confused. I ponder my situation. There are two dangers that I ponder about. Do I abandon the kingdom of Ray, which is my desire, which is what he's promised? Ubaidullah says, you go fight Hussein, kill Hussein, and I will give you the kingdom of Ray. Huge kingdom. Do I abandon the kingdom of Ray, which is my desire, the heart's inclination? Or do I return sinful for killing Hussein? In killing him, there is fire with no veil, but the kingdom of Ray is the delight of my eye. Look at the internal conflict. You could see the disorientation in his words. You could see that his heart wants something, his mind wants something, his body is doing something. And that's why to the final day of his life, he was living trauma. Umar ibn Sa'd, it's narrated, to the final days of his life, he could not remove the image of Karbala, the image of Imam Hussain from his head. He knew what he was doing. Now, let's contrast this with the tranquility of the camp of Imam Hussain alayhi salam on the night of Ashura, the night of the 10th. They know their fate. Imam Hussain has told them. They know their fate. They know what's awaiting them. The companions of the Imam, the family of the Imam, what are they doing? The scene, it's described, it was like a group, it was like a beehive. A beehive, you know how bees, they're just moving all over the place. Between qa'im wa qa'id wa sajid wa rak. It was all these companions between prostration and dua and supplication and the conversations that we're having. It was buzzing in the camp of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The levels of spirituality were at the highest, at the peak. It's even narrated that some like for example, Burayr was joking. He was playing around with some of the companions that were joking around with each other. He says, you know where we're going? That one of the companions asked him, why? He says, is it time to joke? He says, do you know what's happening tomorrow? You know who we're with? The certainty. When Imam Hussain alayhi salam told them, guys, you guys can leave. هَذَا اللَّيْلْ قَدْ غَشِيَكُمْ. I'm giving you the green light. You can all leave. It's nighttime. No one's going to see. Don't be embarrassed. He turned off the lamp. He turned off the candles. Whoever wants to leave, leave. What did they reply? Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam says, oh Abu Abdullah, by Allah, we will never leave you. Ya Abu Abdullah, we will defend you with our lives, with our souls until our last breath. One jumps up and says, if you were to kill me and cut me up into pieces and bring me back to life 1,000 times, I'll do it again. Another one says, if you were to burn me and scatter my ashes and then bring me back, I'll do. You're talking about a people that were looking at death and with a smile they were approaching death. Why? Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya. It's living in tranquility. The heart, the soul, the mind, everything is working in harmony. But my dear brothers and sisters, these statements of loyalty and belief from the Imam's camp didn't just come out of nowhere. It's not like these guys just woke up one day and said, you know what, I'm going to be loyal to Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imagine How many Muslims were around at the time? Just under 100 people, 100 companions. Between 70, 72, 73 companions. What led these people to come and stay with Imam Hussain alayhi salam? See, the journey of Imam Hussain alayhi salam was crucial to understanding the character development of these amazing companions. And Imam Hussain, as we mentioned yesterday, his journey started in Medina. Inshallah, I want to take you guys historical context tonight. We'll finalize the historical context, and inshallah, we'll go into the majlis. And then tomorrow, we'll go into the story of Muslim. But tonight, I want to take you what happened. Imam Hussain alayhi salam on the 28th of Rajab knows what's happening. Yazid has come. He's now the Khalifa. Imam Hussain bids his final farewells, as we mentioned yesterday, to his grandfather, his mother, his brother. He prepares himself, and with full harmony, with full tranquility, Imam Hussain alayhi salam leaves Medina, takes his family and his companions, and he arrives in Mecca on the 3rd of Sha'ban. Now, for approximately 4 months, he stays in Mecca. Now, during this time, what is Imam Hussain alayhi salam doing? He's strategizing and he's planning. He's sending out messages, he's sending out letters to all different places, all the different Muslims around. And he starts to see letters pouring in from where? From Kufa. Thousands of them. Some narrations say 30,000. Signatures were pledged to Imam Hussain, waiting for his arrival, waiting for his leadership. So the people had promised their support and their loyalty. Now, Imam Hussain alayhi salam is a leader. He's cautious. He knows what's happening. He's studying the situation. So instead of just going, what does he do? He sends his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil. He says, Muslim, go to Kufa, assess the situation, tell me what's happening. I'm going to gather this, what's going on here. I'm going to prepare the companions, prepare the family, and you let me know what's happening. Keep me updated. In Mecca, pressure starts to build. The Muslim goes to Kufa, but now the spies from Yazid's camp are everywhere. And Hajj season is just about to begin. And Imam Hussain alayhi salam, out of fear of assassination, he doesn't want to be assassinated in the Kaaba. He doesn't want to he knows Yazid. Yazid will assassinate in the Kaaba. He has no limits, Yazid. If Yazid had limits, it was a different story. Imam Hussain knows Yazid has no limits. Although that the Arabs have some pride and honor, Yazid has no pride and honor. He will kill in the Kaaba if he needs to. So Imam Hussain alayhi salam leaves Mecca. And he says before he leaves Mecca, he left a powerful message because people were questioning just before Hajj. He says, I have not come out to stir emotions or to play with oppression. He's like, I'm not just here to fight just for the sake of fighting. I'm not just trying to cause an uproar just so I can make an emotional stir. He didn't say this, I'm just basically explaining that. He said, I have not come out to stir emotions or to play with oppression. He said, I want to bring the ummah back to the path of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar, to enjoining good and forbidding evil. I want to lead them to the path of my grandfather and my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now the caravan of Imam Hussain alayhi salam consists of his family, his close companions, and they set out towards Iraq. They set sail towards Kufa. Thousands of messages have come in, so they start to make their way. Now on the way, they make many stops. It's, as you know, it's a long distance between Mecca and Kufa. So I'm going to go through some of these stops for you, and then inshallah we'll transition into the majlis. And some of these stops, I want to explain certain parts of the mission of the Imam and certain important aspects of what happened to him prior to his arrival to Karbala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the stops was at a place called Tan'im. And the Imam encountered a caravan of goods coming from Yemen to Syria. And what he does is he buys all of these possessions, all of the stuff in the caravan, and he starts to share them amongst the people with him and the people from the caravan. So essentially he's starting to rid himself of all his worldly possessions. He's preparing himself and he's ridding himself of everything that's connected to dunya. In the next station, the next part, so he continues his journey. In the next station, he meets the renowned poet Farazdaq. And this is, if you guys have heard this, where he asks, the Imam asks him, what's happening in Kufa? We're waiting for Muslim to get back to us, but you're just on the way back from Kufa. Have you heard anything? And Farazdaq was a famous poet. He says, their hearts are with you, but their swords are against you. Meaning there's disharmony. The heart is one thing, but the body is something else. The Imam continues his journey. He says, Allah does what He wishes and I leave to Him. He is the most just. He journeys on and then then on the way, it reaches them the news of the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil. Imam Hussain gathers his companions and he informs them. He tells them, guys, Muslim ibn Aqil, my cousin, has just been assassinated in Kufa. He was going to gather up the troops and the army. I don't know if that's going to happen right now. So, and this is he says, those who wish to leave may do so freely. I now free them from their oath. Now Imam Hussain, see, brothers and sisters, I just want to make this clear in case I haven't made this clear yet. When Imam Hussain rose, he didn't rise saying, I just want to astashhad and I want to die and I want to kill myself. When Imam Hussain rose, he was putting a stance in history to say no against oppression. He was trying to establish a revolution. He was trying to establish a government. He was trying to revolt against the government of Yazid. That's why he was rallying the army. That's why he went to Kufa and he's trying to send Muslim. So up until now, Imam al-Hussein is trying to build an army to obliterate Yazid. So when the news, and the companions have this idea in mind as well, right? We're going to Kufa, we're going to get all the troops together, Mukhtar is there, all of the different companions are there. But when Imam Hussain figures out that Muslim has been assassinated, the people have left Imam al-Hussein, left Muslim. Now he's like, okay, strategy might be changing. Now he offers his companions, okay, I know this was the promise. If you want, you can leave now. Because things might get much more dangerous from here. But his companions stood firm. And on the first day of Muharram, they arrived at a place called Dhul Husam. And this is where Imam al-Hussein meets the army of Hur ibn Yazid. And he had 1,000 people. Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyah, inshallah, in the coming nights we'll come back to his story. But just remember, Hur ibn Yazid is ordered by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, the governor of Kufa. He says, whatever you do, do not let Hussein enter Kufa. Here is 1,000 soldiers, do not let Hussein enter Kufa. And Hur is the general of this army, or this 1,000-man army. So that was sent, and Imam Hussain encounters them and he sees that they're thirsty. He orders his men to bring them water. Imam himself gives some of them water and he quenches their thirst. He even gives the animals water. He says, look, it's the heat of the desert has been impacting the horses, give them water. And then Imam Hussain alayhi salam leads the Dhuhr prayers. Now keep in mind, let me show you the disharmony. Yeah? See, the people that Imam's fighting are Muslim, right? Muslims. Now when a Muslim wants to pray, and they're praying in congregation, in Jama'ah, who leads the prayer? The Imam of the prayer. Now when you're praying with a group of Muslims, who do they usually appoint to lead the prayer? The most learned, the most knowledgeable, the one who is worthy of leading the prayer. Who do you think led the prayer? Imam Hussain. Who did he lead? Everyone. The Hur himself, the leader of the group that is coming to stop Imam, he said, who are we to pray by ourselves? We're going to come and pray behind you. You are the grandson of Rasulullah. Disharmony. Once again, they're coming to pray behind the person they're coming to stop. Okay. At this point, Imam Hussain finishes the prayer and he starts to speak to the companions of Hur, because these are people from Kufa, right? He says, "O people of Kufa, you sent me your delegations, you wrote me your letters, you told me you had no Imam and that I should come and unite you and lead you in the way of Allah. You wrote to me that the Ahlul Bayt are more qualified to govern your affairs than those who claim to which they have no right and act unjustly and wrongly. But you've changed your mind. You've become ignorant. You've become ignorant of our rights. You have forgotten your promises. It's fine. I'll turn back. If you don't want me, I'll turn back." Now, let me make this clear. Imam Hussain is not saying, I want to turn back, I'm giving up. Now he's putting a stance in history. He's saying, I'm not here, I don't want to fight for the sake of fighting. Imam Hussain says, like, you know what, I'll go back, I'll regather. What does Hur say? He says, I am not allowed to let you go back. So now Hur starts to maneuver the Imam. This is where Imam Hussain alayhi salam moves away from Hur, takes his army, steps aside from Hur, and this is where Imam Hussain delivers one of his most famous sermons in the lead up to Karbala. Listen to what he says. He says, O people, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that if a man sees a tyrannical ruler transgressing against Allah and the Prophet and oppressing the people, but does nothing by word or action to change the situation, then it will be just for Allah to place him where he deservedly belongs. Do you not see to what low affairs have come? Do you not observe the truth has not been adhered to, and that falsehood has no limit? But as for me, I look upon death as a means of attaining martyrdom, and I consider life among transgressors as nothing but an agony and an affliction. By the way, this is the mission statement of what's happening today in Palestine, yeah? This is the mission statement of what's happening in Palestine and Israel. The reason why you have a group of people in this world who have never ever let go of this powerful cause, this cause of humanity and justice, is because they follow a man like Hussein ibn Ali. It's because of lines like this. We learn that there's no point of living in a world where there's a tyrannical ruler who's going against Allah, going against the Prophet, and me as a Muslim and as a follower of Muhammad, I'm doing nothing. I have no cares. He says it goes against all of your responsibility. Imam left, as I mentioned, the army of Hur, and this is where he met another companion who had just exited Kufa. And he learned that all the Kufans have now abandoned Muslim, they have abandoned you. You are all alone now, Ya Abu Abdullah. And this is where Imam Hussain now knows there is no hope for support from anyone else. I am with who I have. So this is when Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he's resting, he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And his son, Ali al-Akbar, comes to him and he says, Father, what's wrong? Imam said that in his sleep he heard some of the people saying that we're going to our deaths. We're on the way, we're on the journey to death. And this is when Ali al-Akbar says, Father, alasna ala al-haq? Are we not on the true path? Are we not on the path of truthfulness? He said, Bala, of course we are, my son. He said, if so, there's no need not to worry. If we fall upon death, or death falls upon us. And so this is the place where Ibn Ziyad brings a message to Hur and he says, do not leave the Imam, do not allow the Imam to move. This is the position, this is the land. And so the caravan of Ashq, the caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam is passing through Ghadriya to a place, and then the Imam sighs and he looks around and he asks, what is the name of this place? قالوا تسمى كربلاء. Imam al-Hussain asks, what is the name of this land? They tell him it's called Karbala. فتنفس الصعداء وقال أرض كرب وبلاء. ثم قال قفوا ولا ترحلوا من هنا. فها هنا والله مناخ ركابنا. وها هنا والله سفك دماءنا. وها هنا والله تهتك حريمنا. وها هنا والله قتل رجالنا. وها هنا والله
ذبح أطفالنا، وها هنا والله تزال قبورنا، وبهذه التربة وعدني جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله ولا خلف لقوله. In another narration by Al-Kalbi, he says, they traveled until they reached the land of Karbala. Imam Hussein's horse stopped moving, so he dismounted and he mounted another horse, and he wouldn't move either. He kept changing horses, but none would move. Seeing this strange occurrence, Imam asked, what is this land called? They replied, it's called the land of Ghadriya. He asked, does it have another name? They said it's called Nainawa. He asked, does it have another name? They said it's called the banks of the Euphrates. He asked, does it have another name? They said it's called Karbala. He breathed deeply and he said, the land of distress and calamity. Then he said, stop here, do not move from here. By Allah, here we will camp. Here our blood will be spilled. Here our sanctity will be violated. Here our men will be slaughtered. Here our children will be slaughtered. Here is where our graves will be. The Prophet, my grandfather Rasulullah, promised me about this land. When Imam Hussain arrived at the land of Karbala, he pitched his tent and began to prepare his sword. He began fixing his sword and preparing his weapons. It's narrated, and he begins reciting the following verses. Ya dahra ufayn laki min khalili, كم لك بالإشراق والأصيل من طالب بحقه قتيلي، والدهر لا يقنع بالبديل، وكل حي سالك سبيلي، وإنما الأمر إلى الجليل. In the still air of Karbala's eve, in the still air of Karbala's eve, under a twilight sky, Lady Zainab heard her brother Hussein's mournful cry. O time, the foe you claim all in your sway. The dawn is yours, the dusk and the hours of the day. His words so steeped in a sorrow she could taste, a prophecy of doom, an impending and tragic waste. فلما سمعت زينب تلك الأبيات قالت يا أخي هذا كلام من نعى نفسه إلينا. فقال عليه السلام نعم يا أختاه. قالت واثك لا ينعى الحسين نفسه إلينا. With tearful eyes Zainab turned to her brother, brave and kind. Are these words of one who has death on his mind. Sayyidi ya Aba Abdullah, do you have death on your mind, my brother? He says, yes, my sister, he replied, in a voice soft and low, his countenance the canvas of an impending woe. A gasp escaped her lips, a pain sharp and raw. At last, my brother Hussain, his fate he now perceives. In his verse, the silent goodbye she receives. A farewell song beyond words reprieve. Destiny known, yet his courage does not sway. Heartbreaking silently, and the Karbala sky soft array. Ya Sayyidi, Ya Aba Abdullah, Hussainan wa Hussain, Hussainan wa Hussain. Ha huna ardu Karbala, وهذه الرزية إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.